We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here
Rob
with
H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Another week of staying home, and Tom has grown a beard that you're missing.
That's
if you
right.
are not
Well,
watching YouTube, oh boy, are you missing out. Woohoo!
God, I don't ever grow a beard. In fact, my sideburns keep getting higher and higher because I just shave all the gray out, and my beard is like full of gray. So I've decided that I'm growing a quarantine beard. It's going to be terrible. It's going to be patchy. I don't grow a good beard. I'm not doing these beard guys who, with the big, thick, manly, bushy, stick off your face and get all. No, it's going to be scraggly and awful. But we're going to see what it looks like when it comes in. I haven't done it in years and years and years because of all the gray. So I figured I'd give it a go. And while I'm stuck at home, my thought process was no one's going to see me anyways, except for people at the store. And if I really get embarrassed, I could just wear a bandana or something because whatever. But then I forgot about the stupid YouTube.
Well, if we ever do get masks back, you're probably going to want to shave it off because you don't get a nice tight seal with a beard. So,
I am not worried about masks. I'm not.
Better to just stay home.
Nothing touches my face after I leave the house. So if you're listening to this in the far future and you're wondering what we talk about, COVID-19, the pandemic that nobody seems to be taking seriously enough in this country, at least.
I'm not super pleased. Friday and Saturday, this past Friday and Saturday, I got pretty upset there because there were way too many people in the Vancouver area just out and about. And I mean, especially stores like Costco's were just packed. The parking lots were more packed than before there was ever a stay-at-home, order around.
Right.
Like, I don't know what was going on. But thankfully, Monday, it calmed right back down. So it seems like Friday and Saturday, everyone was like, we got to do it now. I don't know what was going on. But hopefully people smarten up a little bit more than that because, we gotta maybe not completely overwhelm our healthcare systems. That would be good.
One would think.
Be helpful.
I mean, I've got, I live in a neighborhood that's got a lot of families and teenagers and young kids and stuff like that, and I'm still seeing what I would describe as gaggles of teenagers hanging out together. 3 or 4, and I don't know what their parents are thinking. I'm like, I give my kids a hard time, most because I love them, and people will know that if I'm talking about how terrible my children are, I clearly don't really feel that way, or I wouldn't actually say it. But these people clearly do not love their children. They're like, nah, you're good. You catch whatever you want to catch. You just don't worry. You're fine. Yeah, don't worry. How's the asthma? Fine? All right, go. Really disturbing to see the amount of children. There was a pastor in Tampa that was just arrested for holding mass, even though there was a stay-at-home order and everything else. So, maybe people should take it a little bit more seriously. But that's all I can do is what I can do, which is my kids have not left the house under my direct supervision, except to walk the dog. And I have to trust that they are not going around licking telephone poles while they're out there. I hope.
One would hope. One would hope that's always the case, but one also never knows.
I mean, if we haven't impressed upon them how important it was. Like, I yelled at my kid the other day for pushing his glasses up while he was outside. I'm like, don't touch your face. He's like, but my glass. I'm like, I don't care. Lean your head back. So, yeah, we're taking it pretty seriously here. Not for us because, we're low risk. For all, none of us have asthma, none of us have any of the conditions that make you more susceptible to something bad happening. But we all know people who do.
Exactly.
We all know people who have, my parents. I mean, they're at high risk. We know people with asthma. We know people with really bad asthma. We know people with respiratory issues. At the climbing gym, there's quite a few people that I see on the regular who, after they're finished their climbs, have to come down and have oxygen. One of the guys that his daughter climbs on the team with my kid, years ago he had some sort of cancer and had a lung removed. I don't know if that makes him a higher or lower risk, but it certainly doesn't make him a lower risk.
I would definitely think higher risk, that for sure.
So, I don't want to be like at the tail end of this thing and they're like, okay, you can go back out in the world and I'm the one who brought it to that
Right.
dude, or one of my kids brought it to his kid.
No, it's just a matter of anybody who, whatever it does to you, that's one thing. But if you spread it to even just one or two other people, they might end up in hospital or needing hospital. And there are a finite number of beds and a finite amount of resources. And that is the real worry. So, yeah, that's the way to think of it.
I've told my kids is, listen, you're not high risk and so you may feel like you're safe, but I don't want you to have to live with the guilt of you having brought this home, given it to me. I gave it to my parents, and my parents died. You killed your grandparents. Is that the way you want to feel about this? And they're like, dark enough, Dad? I'm like, no,
real.
It's not dark.
Sadly
I want
real.
you to be safe.
Yeah,
I want you to be safe. So everybody out there in AVRant land, let's just all remember that we can only do what we can do, and do the best, not just for your family, but for everybody around you. We'll all get through this, and hopefully this will be the last pandemic we'll ever see in our lifetimes, and it will be over with sooner rather than later. But between now and then, we are going to absolutely kill our home theaters. These things are going to get awesome. So I don't know about you, but my yard is done. I've done it. Today I started painting a hallway. That's how bored I am in this house. I am painting a hallway, not the whole hallway, because on one side of the hallway is the bathroom that we're gonna have redone, and we're gonna have a door moved and like the wall kind of adjust. I'm like, I ain't painting that side. I'll paint the other side. So I'm gonna have half a hallway painted. That's what I'm doing to keep myself from strangling my children as they find new and interesting ways to still miss homework, even though it's right there on the computer in front of them.
It turns out it's not the setting. Well, on related but positive news, some people expressed their concern after I mentioned my nephew has been sick. Well, we will never know if he had COVID or not because he was never hospitalized, never got to that. But he was running a fever and had a cough and all that. So the possibility is certainly there. But he has finally been allowed to emerge from his room. So he is de-quarantined from his own family. And believe me, my sister is the most cautious person when it comes to this. So if she's giving him the okay to, reemerge from his bedroom, then he is definitely okay now. And so
he came out an inch taller and his voice.
He very well might have. He is totally in that age range where I don't know how much he was eating. He might have put on 20 pounds for all I know. He was a tall and lanky person at the moment, which is very, very normal for a kid his age.
He's ranked top 10 in the battle arena on Pokemon Sword and Shield.
But it's been a lot of Skype. It's been a lot of FaceTime. So we're fortunate that we have such technologies because, hey, wasn't that long ago we didn't have easy, free video chat to anybody that you want to. So
we've FaceTimed my parents. We've my friend's got Cisco WebEx through his business. We had drinks with them last Friday. Put the computer up right on the table. Just sat around and talked to them. I know people have gone outside and done outside stuff with their neighbors. That's great. You can do that. But in other news too, Lee Overstreet, who's on this podcast, we talked about him last week of having been ill. He still is not convinced that he had it, but he had something. But he is getting better.
he's got something. So. I mean, his main thing is like he never got a fever, so he's not sure. But then not everybody who's had this virus has had a fever, and the rest of his symptoms sound like this thing.
All line up.
So it's.
But he's feeling
better. He's on the mend.
So those of you that were worried about Lee and his review of of what's coming up, did we ever talk about what he's going to do?
I don't know. I don't think we want to jinx it, so we're still.
At this point, all right. I told him he should lick every bit of those things. You want to keep them?
Geez.
Cough on them.
That's terrible.
Don't tell SVS I said
Tom. That is the horrible thing to say.
I didn't say that. Shut up. That would have been funny, though. All right, this is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. You go to www.avrant.com, leave us a comment there. Facebook.com/avrant podcast, YouTube.com/avrant, where you could see my scruffy quarantine beard that it's just like crazy. God, I hate it.
Lotion. You need to lotion it up.
God, I'm not lotioning.
That's what you have to do.
Do I look like a lotion guy?
It's the only way.
I'm not lotion. No.
And you're just gonna itch.
I know that I know very little about beards because I've never really grown one successfully. Contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His Twitter's at firstreflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter's at avrant_Tom. All right. So we just said you can send your questions to question@avrant.com. We haven't run into this yet, but because we still got lots of questions.
Well, yeah, we got 20 somehow. I don't know how that happened. We got a gazillion come in over the weekend. I was like, oh, it looks like we got about a dozen, and then like, boom, 20. Okay.
So if so for now we're flush with questions, so that's fine. But if it seems like this is going to drag on and our questions start to dry up, I'd love to hear your stories. Maybe we could have a couple of them. That if you want to share about your what you've done in your home theater since the quarantine started, or your self-isolation, or whatever, social distancing, whatever we're calling it these days. I call it quarantine, but if you want to share a story with that with us, send it our way at question@avrant.com. Or if you want to share some sort of heartwarming tale of things that you have done or things that have been done for you, not necessarily AV related, I'd be happy to share those. We can't promise we'll share them all or any of them.
Questions will remain the priority. Questions come first.
Yeah. But we were worried last week that we weren't going to get any questions, so this came to my mind. So I wanted to go ahead and put that out there into the ether. And if you guys have something you'd like to share with us, feel free to. And if we don't get a chance to share them on the podcast, we'll figure out some other way to do it, or we just won't. That might happen too. But we want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you just support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you do that is going to avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, which sends you to a PayPal donation site for a one-time donation. So we want to thank Lee. It is Leo, but it's not
Overstreet.
That Leo. It's a different.
We have at least 3 Lees that we know of now, including Overstreet. So Thank you, Leo, not Overstreet, for being a PayPal donor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We also want to thank our 113 up from a 111 last week patrons over at patreon.com. It's a monthly subscription service where you subscribe to your content creators of choice and give them a minimum of $1 a month up to infinity dollars a month. And we want to thank our 113 patrons, including Francis.
Definitely. Yeah, we've hit a milestone as far as monthly pledges go. And so I know for a fact that some people are expressing that they appreciate that, this is something they can listen to and have a little distraction for a while and talk about something that they enjoy, and it's a hobby and it's a happier time to listen to. So
for literally once since we started going to this longer format, I'm glad we're in
it actually makes sense.
People are like, oh, thank God, I need something that's not going to be over within 5 minutes. Like, I don't want to have to hit the next episode thing. Like, Everything is Alive. I love that podcast. Yep. Everything is Alive, where they interview comedians pretending to be inanimate objects. It's great. It's just like, oh my God, will you people? It's over already.
Even on 1.5 times speed, we last a while on this podcast. But big thanks to our 113 patrons, and Francis, thank you so much for being one of them.
And we want to thank, like Rob said, some people have been expressing their gratitude that we are still podcasting and we're staying safe so that we can stay healthy, so that we can continue to podcast. So Tap, Tom, Christian, Carl, and Cesar all express thanks, and you're welcome.
Definitely.
Gentlemen.
I'll say the names again. Tap, Tom, Christian, Carl, and Cesar. We appreciate that you're expressing your gratitude. And you know what? Like I said, I'm probably missing some people because people reach out on Facebook and Twitter and that too. So if I missed your name, it is absolutely not intentional. And then thank you so much for all the support and keeping this community happy and growing and thriving.
That's right. Yeah, all we're trying to do is give you guys a little distraction and help out a little bit. So anything that we can do and make you laugh a little bit. In the news, not a lot's really gone on this last week. It's been kind of slow. It's just nothing, really. Amazon Prime Video is finally getting multiple user profiles under one account. You'll be able to have 6 profiles in total, including be able to set up a kids profile that filters out content by ratings, which is nice. Welcome to like 5 years ago Netflix.
Pretty much.
I guess.
Still can't do the thing where you search for a show and it just shows you all the seasons and gives you the highest available quality. You have to still
Just
individually
so weird.
search for individual seasons and individual quality levels. No idea why Amazon's interface is that way, but it's almost as though they're like, people are actually watching our service now. Maybe we should do some of these things that make sense. But that's good. Every little bit of progress helps.
If you're not watching The Expanse right now on Amazon Prime and you have Amazon Prime, you need to stop what you're doing. Finish this podcast. You've only got another 2 hours.
Could be
but
more.
Finish this podcast. And then we might not go. This is a late night one, and I don't know that I'm going to go the full distance on this one. I did not sleep well last night. Not because of anything going on. I just didn't. But The Expanse is just phenomenal. And definitely check that out. Lee, comes via Lee. LG's Web OS is the first smart TV platform to get a dedicated Movies Anywhere app. That consolidates the various platforms that support Movies Anywhere to a single interface, so you can see your purchases from Apple, Amazon Prime, Vudu, Google Play, Microsoft Movies and TV, Fandango Now, Xfinity, and Verizon all in one place, unless it's a Paramount, Lionsgate, or MGM property, since they still haven't joined Movies Anywhere. And most importantly, you will have to remember all of your passwords. Which you do not.
Isn't it supposed to just put it all into one big digital locker that is shared by all the various services? That's the idea. It is still United States only. That's what. Yeah. In Canada, situation is not good. You remember there used to be Ultraviolet, right?
Right. That's gone.
No, so I mean, not only is Ultraviolet gone, there is no service in Canada that was part of Ultraviolet anymore. They're all gone. The big ones were Cinema Now and Flixster, and both of those have shut down completely. If you had an Ultraviolet library in Canada, there is literally no way to watch it outside of getting a VPN and doing things through a US IP address. That is now the only way to watch your Ultraviolet digital content locker. So Movies Anywhere cannot get to Canada soon enough. That would be very nice to have a way of watching the content you at one time purchased. Gosh, what an idea that would be.
I think it's raining. Oh, well, we needed it. That's good. Yeah, so right, I swear the two things that you want to be investing in right now, if you've got money, is streaming services. Well, I guess 3. Any sort of way of getting more bandwidth through the current pipes, and video conferencing of any sort. Just right now, everybody's going crazy. We saw some friends. We went for a walk after dinner with a dog because she needs it, and we need it. After dinner every night, we take the whole family. We go for a walk. We make sure we give everybody a wide berth and everything else. And we saw a family we haven't seen in months, and we're not really all that close to them. But I swear it was like, oh my god, people! And there's people here. And we could talk to them. I mean, we can't get close, but we could talk to them. You could feel like how we kept trying to get closer to each other, and then we would back up a little bit, and kept trying to get closer, and then we'd back up a little bit. We were so excited to be talking to somebody. I'm like, oh my god, it's people, and they're real, right in front of me, like in 3D. Like I finally understand why Rob likes 3D. I'm like, oh my god,
nice
people. All right, comments here. John on Twitter just thought he'd share some images of a recent mishap in his theater. He's using a pair of Ascend CR2 speakers, and as Rob knows, the cabinets are made out of laminated bamboo. It's supposed to be strong stuff. Strong stuff. When them took a tumble, he was very concerned that the speaker might be damaged. It is, but only slightly, and on one back corner. His wall and floor, on the other hand, did not fare so well. The laminated bamboo is strong stuff indeed. He got a chip out of his drywall, and that can't be hardwood.
I don't know if that's real hardwood or laminate that's just made to look like hardwood, but that is a significant, what would you call that?
I would call that I need to buy a rug, honey.
Either that, I mean, that plank has to get replaced. That's what's going. I mean, the wall not so bad. That's some drywall repair. Although it's a textured wall, so that makes it a little bit trickier to just do a drywall patch. Thankfully, the speaker itself. I mean, there's no way any of the internals got affected by that. It's a little chip on the back corner there. The finish has a blemish on it, but definitely not the end of the world. But laminated bamboo.
I mean, you might be worried that something got knocked loose in there, but that would from hitting, but that would be the only
they're
thing.
quite easy to open up those speakers, so if you do notice any performance problems, it's not too difficult to get inside.
Right. All right, let's get to the questions here. Carlos, when using the Audyssey Editor app, there are the additional options that are only available within the app. Target sound options, high frequency roll-off target, mid-range compensation, curve editor, and multi EQ filter frequency range. If you choose any of these, do they apply to both the reference and flat selections in the AV receiver itself? Carlos was under the impression that the two target sound options are the same as reference versus flat, but is that really the case? It seems as though no matter what changes he makes, when he uploads his results to the receiver and checks the results there, the receiver is set to Audyssey reference. So how does all of that work? Wow, I never really thought about it. I just assumed it was universal. Isn't it just universal for all of them?
No, it actually only applies to the reference curve inside of the AV receiver. That is what you are altering. So if you didn't have the Audyssey Editor app and you just set everything up through your AV receiver, you have the choice of choosing at least 2, sometimes 3 different target curves, which are the Audyssey reference curve, sometimes called the movie curve, the Audyssey flat curve, sometimes called the music curve, and then some of them have a left-right bypass where it basically measures the regular native un-EQ'd response of your front left-right speakers and then makes that the target for the rest of your speakers, which is not something that we ever recommend doing, but that does exist sometimes. But with the app, you have these other parameters that you can change, but they are all changing the Audyssey reference curve. So if you now choose reference versus flat versus left-right bypass inside of the AV receiver itself, flat is still flat, as it always was. That's still the same target curve, and the left-right bypass is still measuring your front left-right and now making it the target curve, but the Audyssey reference option has now been changed however you have changed it inside of the Audyssey Editor app. So there are these 2 target sound options. That's the name that it's given in the Audyssey Editor app, and those are 2 different high frequency roll-off targets. One of them is like overall more gradual, but then in the top octave from 10 to 20 kilohertz, it rolls off really steeply. And then the other one is like a more linear, so it's a little bit steeper in the overall sense, but it's just like linear going down. But it is only the Audyssey reference option that has a high frequency roll off. Audyssey flat does not have a high frequency roll off. So it's giving you a choice of 2 predetermined high frequency roll offs within that Audyssey reference target. Or of course, you can manually change it to whatever you want with the curve editor. So yeah, nothing went wrong there. It should say Audyssey reference once you go back in there, Carlos, and that is the thing you're changing.
Okie dokie, I did not know that. Tap has a patio where he has set up a pair of Sonance outdoor speakers. The patio is covered overhead and fully open on 2 sides. One of those sides has a 60-inch wide masonry column, and Tap would like to mount a TV on that column for outdoor viewing. It looks like he's already got a
He does indeed, and an electrical outlet and some cords for signal to get there.
He's already installed 2 runs of Cat 6 and a coax cable all the way back to his basement where all of his audio video gear is housed in a rack, and the Sonance amp that powers outdoor Sonance speakers is in the basement too. He really only wants a Chromecast Ultra connected to this patio TV, so he figured he'd plug that directly into the TV and then feed stereo audio from the TV's optical audio output to the Sonance amp in the basement via a simple optical to Ethernet adapter. So far, so good. I mean, I don't see any reason why that wouldn't work.
That seems fine. I mean, you could actually, so I guess it's a matter of how would it be controlled, right? If you had the Chromecast Ultra down in the basement, but then what is it even plugged into? Because that's an HDMI only device. So yeah,
I was going to say, unless the Sonance amp has it.
I mean, it has an audio input, but it doesn't have an HDMI. Right, so yeah, what you're proposing there as your connection path makes total sense. You take your little Chromecast audio dongle, plug that into one of your HDMI inputs on your TV, and then you can take the optical audio output, convert that to Ethernet, and send it down to your basement. Totally good.
So when he was at Costco, he picked up a 58-inch Samsung RU7100 for only $400. He knows there are actual outdoor TVs, but they are way too expensive. He doesn't want to spend more than $500, so he got his mind set on using a regular indoor TV. During the worst weather, he can unmount the TV and bring it inside for safety, and the rest of the time he plans to use a waterproof TV cover. He has the option of paying for extra warranty coverage. Would that be worthwhile? There's no way.
There is no way they're going to cover your TV under warranty if you've installed it outdoors. outside.
No,
There is no point spending
sense.
your money on an additional warranty that they'll just say the way you used it constitutes user error or abuse or whatever if something went wrong. So what you've got is what you've got.
This is it's too late. You've already done it, and this is your plan, and you're sticking with it. This is gonna end very interestingly. I would highly suggest you figure out some way of putting a box around this thing that is waterproof and weatherproof and everything else. I don't know how you're going to be able to do that. I've seen it. I've seen people that have a regular TV installed inside of a case with the
you have to think about ventilation as well, because there is.
We got to think about.
Heat.
There's so much stuff, But that time that's why the outdoor TVs cost more because they.
I mean,
they
where
do all
he's
this,
installing this, it is definitely exposed. I mean, it's not from directly overhead, but I mean, if there's any amount of wind, then coming from the side of the TV, coming from the back of the TV, it's exposed where it is.
I've had ants invade my office and get inside my power supplies for my computer speakers back in the day. This is probably going to end with you buying another TV.
Possibly. I mean, at least the weatherproof cover that he's gone for, it does go all the way around the back. It does a pretty good job of sealing in the TV for the most part. I mean, it's certainly better than it just being outright exposed. No question about that. And if you can fairly easily unmount the TV and take it inside when the weather is bad, then I mean, it should be okay for sometimes. But I mean, there's going to be times where it starts raining out of nowhere. It's windy. It's coming in from the side, and that might be the end of your TV. It might be another $400 or $500 you're spending.
Just from my own experience with my grill, the grill gets hot, obviously, and you say, I'm going to let it cool down for a few minutes before I put the cover on it, and then you go eat dinner and you forget about it, and you wake up the next morning and you tell the kids to put the cover on it and soak you wet. This is, you're not going to want to put that waterproof or, airtight, whatever it is, cover on your TV right after you finish using it, because it'll still be venting. It'll still be cooling down, depending on what, maybe it depends on how long you used it and everything else. But I don't know,
I think the general idea of going cheap and just kind of hoping for the best, that's sort of the way to come. If you're not going to spend the money for an actual outdoor TV, or you're not going to fully enclose this somehow, then that's sort of the way you go.
Yeah. So is there a different TV under $500 we would recommend more highly? With the column being 60 inches wide, he could go as large as a 65-inch screen, and he wants the largest and best he can afford. The Samsung RU7100 is still in its box and could easily be returned or exchanged. So would something from TCL, Vizio, or LG be significantly different? Well, I mean, you're already... Well, I certainly don't want you to spend any more money.
No, I'm not suggesting that ever.
But I mean, really, what is the viewing? What are you going to be using this for? Because this is not out. I mean, this is outside, so it's covered, but we're certainly not light controlled in any sense.
I mean, he says he's planning to only use it in evenings,
nighttime?
So that's what he says.
I mean, you're going to want to use it when the game's on, right? And the game sometimes starts early and sometimes starts later.
I mean, what I would say is pure performance. If you get all the way up to Samsung's 8 and 9 series, which are way more money, and there's no way I would risk putting them outside under any circumstance, but I mean, they are super duper bright and have the best anti-reflective, anti-glare screen coating that there's ever been, but it's only in the 8 and 9 series. You're not going to get it. It's certainly not down here in the RU7100 series. I mean, I have no real reason to tell you to return what you got and put. I mean, nothing from any of the other brands is going to be significantly better. But I would just say that Vizio's V series, you could get the 65-inch versus the 58 that you have right now for about $50 more. And the Vizio V series actually can get a bit brighter than the RU7100. So both of those things are things that you said that you might want, and it's about $50. So it is a little bit more money. It's about $50 more money, but you would get the larger size and the little bit brighter image. Plus, it's only 12 zones of local dimming, so I don't really count that, but at least it's a full backlight as opposed to just one little strip of light along the bottom, which is what the Samsung has. So it's an actual backlight on the Vizio, and it's bigger and it's brighter. So maybe you exchange this for a Vizio V series.
Okay. Tom, Not me, different dude. From listening to us, it seems as though our approach to determining what is needed in the way of speaker output is all about seeing distance from the speakers, especially for the mid-range and treble. But for subwoofers, it's all about the volume of air, correct?
That sounds
correct.
spot on so far.
Yes. So what about the frequency range just above where the speakers and subwoofer are crossing over? Don't the speakers need to be able to keep up with that volume of air? For example, in his case, he's sitting about 10 feet away in his theater area. And his theater area is a fairly small, about 13 by 8, but then it opens up the back to basically the rest of his house. The total volume of air is about 5,000 cubic feet. Smaller two-way bookshelf speakers would seem to make more sense for his theater area, but we'd be saying he needs some pretty beefy subs if he wants to pressurize his whole house. We would not suggest
Not really.
that.
It's usually unpleasant, but yes. But you would if you actually wanted to pressurize.
Unless you are literally the only person who lives in there. Right. And even then,
to actually pressurize the full 5,000 cubic feet down at 20 hertz, you need some beefy subs. There's no question.
Yeah. Do you live in the middle of a field? You would want some space between you and your neighbors, for sure. And honestly, the hassle of tracking down all the rattles and shakes and vibrating things in your house, it would take literal years, I think. I guess if you did a sweep and you played each tone individually for 5 seconds, 10 seconds at a time, you could maybe lock it down a little bit faster than that. But if you just, as a movie came up, you're like, oh, when this thing happens, something shakes, I'm going to go find it. You're going to be doing this forever. So would speakers with greater bass output make sense for that frequency range just above the crossover? Well, whenever we talk about this, we have sometimes said you might be a good candidate for towers if you are sitting greater than 12 feet away. And the reason that is not because of the tweeters and not really because of the upper mid-range, it's because of the crossover. Where you're coming down at that crossover range, about 80 hertz down to 60 hertz, that kind of range, where you want to make sure that your speakers are still able to put enough output so that when they're crossing over into the subs, it's seamless. And that's what that's about. So even in your large volume of air, you're still sitting 10 feet away from a bookshelf speaker. And, depending on the bookshelf speaker you choose, I would still recommend you get a bookshelf
Yeah, I mean,
speaker.
what we have mentioned is that, your thinking is correct, Tom. You're thinking... Tom who's asking the question.
I'm glad to know that I'm also correct.
Both are correct, but yes. Tom who asked the question, your thinking is correct in that, actually, objectively, everywhere below about 250 hertz, the room is taking over. The room is acting just as much as the speaker itself is or the subwoofer itself is. So you're absolutely right that the speaker is contributing, certainly from 250 hertz down to 80 hertz. The speaker is definitely contributing there, and it is interacting with the room, and the volume of air in the total volume of movable air in your space does matter in that region. So absolutely you're right in that thinking. It is, though, why we've mentioned sometimes that we're mostly concerned with the bulk of what the speaker is playing. That's the mid-range and treble, and that is determined by your physical distance from the speaker. And if you are in a situation exactly like what you described, where your distance from the speakers is not very large, but then you have this large volume of air that opens up behind you, that you might find that you need to raise the crossover frequency between your speakers and subwoofer. If you're using smaller, less bass-capable speakers, it might be necessary to do that exactly for that reason. Now, the subwoofer is playing above 80 hertz. It's still playing. It's rolling off above 80, but it's still playing. So as you move the subwoofer up to, say, even just a 100 hertz crossover, it's still putting out significant output at 200 hertz. 1 octave above, the subwoofer is still putting out significant amount of sound up there. So you can quite easily get the speaker and the subwoofer to merge. You might have to raise the crossover, though. So, but yeah, you're thinking along the right lines.
Infinite Gary. Infinite Gary wants to better understand why color doesn't look exactly the same across different displays that he owns. In particular, he still uses a Pioneer Kuro plasma, as well as a 1080p OLED from 2014. Both of them were professionally calibrated, but they do not look identical. According to the professional measurements, the Pioneer plasma is actually more color accurate, and Gary can see more variation in the shades of colors on the plasma. So the plasma is older technology, but both the measurements and his eyes tell him its colors look better and more accurate. Does this have anything to do with color bit depth? And since both displays were professionally calibrated, why don't the colors look the same? Well, that just has to do with capabilities of the technologies
Right.
that you're dealing with. That's why the colors don't look the same, and even though they're professionally calibrated, it's not like you take your car. Why do I always do car analogies? You can't take your car in to get the tires done and it comes out of Ferrari. It's still going to be a Honda when it comes out, but it can have better tires and better performance and better oil and engine. You can do all kinds of stuff to it. It's still never going to be a Ferrari. But you could so what the set is actually capable of doing, the professional calibrator will go in there and get you the best performance you can get for your TV. If you had a Westinghouse next to either one of these displays you're talking about, you'd be like, this one looks like garbage. You're like, yeah, but it's as good as it's going to get because the professional calibrator.
There's a target that you're trying to hit. And in your case,
Right.
I mean, objectively, if what the professional calibrator came in and measured says the Kuro came closer to hitting the target than this 2014 OLED did. Now, in both cases, you're trying to get as close to the target as you can, but one of them is simply capable of getting closer. And in your case, it's the Kuro Plasma. Now, it's interesting because you have one of the last Kuro Plasmas. It's as mature as plasma TV technology got, basically. I think there was maybe one extra year of development that Panasonic did beyond, but it was towards the end of the life of plasma. It was as good as plasma got, whereas your 2014 OLED is one of the earliest OLEDs, and it still had quite a bit of black crush and things that were going on there, and it was having to dither down in the shadow regions to try and give you slightly above black and stuff. There was issues that they were working out with OLED at that time. It's remarkable how quickly they've developed that technology. So it's almost as though you're comparing the close to last generation to the close to first generation. And that's why the quote-unquote older technology is actually performing better in that case. It's not the color bit depth. Both of these displays are accepting 8-bit color signals, but that's what's coming in as far as the signal goes now. They might have tried to upsample and process at 10 bits or 12 bits or something, but that's all just in the processing. The signal itself coming in, what these displays can handle, are both 8-bit signals. So there's no appreciable difference there. But in the case of the early OLEDs, like, which was one of the sub-pixels was, I mean, there's one of them, I think it was the green. Like, it just couldn't reach the target for green. Just couldn't do it. Couldn't get there in the early days. And that means that every color that is mixed with, again, I think it was green. If it was one of the others, it doesn't really matter. Any colors that are mixed with that color that can't reach the actual target, all of those colors are now off by a little bit. That's how the mixing of colors to make other colors works. So yeah, it's a case of the target remains the same, but not every display is actually going to look there because they can't all reach that target.
Next, he says, base that can punch you in the gut. This is a quote. Gary has often heard this phrase or similar and has always seemed to be lauded as a good thing, but Gary has never actually felt like the bass in any of his systems has punched him in the stomach, despite professional acoustic design installation, top brand equipment, and an infinite bass baffle sub, which is why we call him Infinite Gary. He has no problems achieving strong, clean room filling bass, but nothing that has felt like a literal gut punch. So is something not right in any of his setups, or are these punch you in the stomach systems actually improperly adjusted? That's a pretty good point. I think that the punch you in the gut oftentimes is a little more hyperbole than it is a description of actual physical feeling. I mean, I have been in theaters, Grauman's or Mann's or whatever they're calling it now, Chinese theater. I don't know if they still call it Chinese. I don't know what the right term is these days. Theater in Hollywood was like that. I mean, it was just insane amounts of bass. Like the subwoofers go off, and I could feel the air. And I've talked about this before. I always thought they had ants in that place because I'd be scratching my legs because the air would go underneath the seats and it would go blow up my pant legs. And I thought they had ants in there. And I was always like, man, there's ants in this place. This place is gross. But the bass is awesome, so I'll keep coming. But that was a kind of a place where you could feel it, the pressure waves pushing on you. You could actually physically feel them pushing on your body. And it was, I mean, it is a visceral experience. Now, can you get this at home? Absolutely. That it is something that you can do, but I feel like in theaters with very large rooms, lots of actual space between you and the subwoofers, where they're really filling that room with a lot of bass, it's different than what I have achieved in my own house. Even though I can get there by just turning it up to reference volume, which is something.
Right. I mean, the thing is, like, the immediate example that jumped to mind to me was The Dark Knight, where he's firing off that gun into the various bricks to get the shatter pattern of the bullet and reconstruct the fingerprint. That was a crazy sequence that made no scientific sense. But regardless, the gunshot sounds that were being made, and then Alfred makes the joke afterwards, like, did you make it loud enough, sir? Like, that...
Right.
That I physically feel... Now, I'm not sure I would say it's a gut shot. I feel it in my chest. Like, that's... But it's tactile. It's physical pressure, and I can feel it in my chest when that goes off. And...
The part of Dory, Nemo, when the submarine starts to go down as well, also has that, and it's so much louder than everything else that you tend to have your system a little bit louder than maybe you normally would in an action movie where everything is pretty loud already. You might turn it down a little bit because it could be a little bit too much, but in something like that where there's a lot of talking and all of a sudden this thing comes out of nowhere. Yes, you might have it a little bit louder. So I think one of the differences, probably for Gary as well as for me, is that at home I just don't.
I know pretty much for a fact that Gary doesn't listen at full reference volume, and that's definitely what I think is going to be part of this. I mean, like in the case of that scene in The Dark Knight, they make a joke about it. So when he's saying, is something improperly tuned in the people who feel that physical push in their chest, I'm like, no, because you're supposed to, because they make a joke about it in the movie. So to me, it is correct that physical feeling is supposed to be done. Now, absolutely, Gary, I will agree. There are people who have tuned their bass to be way louder than what reference is actually calling for, because maybe they're coming from car audio, and like I've been in car systems where like it's literally like there's a kid kicking you between the shoulder blades in your back, and it's like no, that's overblown from what the signal asked for.
And I've talked about this many years ago, but when we moved to Australia, I set up my home office, which was like in a closet. I mean, it wasn't an actual closet. It was like in the middle of the house, and there was like open windows or something near it, but there was no door. It was just in there. And I put the subwoofer for this, like a 12-inch sub, underneath my desk, and I had it tuned way too loud. And I put some music on, and I was like, I think I'm going to throw up. I mean, it was that, it was hitting me that hard in that little space. I was sitting so close to it and everything else. So yes, I think, Gary, what you're talking about is like, I don't feel this thing, and, I don't understand why I don't feel this thing. Well, if you turn it up to reference volume and you watch these scenes, you will feel it, and then you'll say, I don't want to hear it this loud.
It is very loud. And and even if you're thinking, Gary's using Anthem equipment and that, but he does have Rants in one of his systems. If you're thinking, like, why isn't dynamic EQ still delivering that, even though I've turned the reference volume down? Well, dynamic EQ isn't literally trying to keep the bass at reference volume at all times. It's still trying to allow you to make it, you turn the master volume down for some reason. It's trying to keep the bass audible. So for a scene like we've been talking about, where you get that tactile feeling, like that signal is so high already that it is definitely going to remain audible, even though you've turned the master volume dial, but you might lose the tactile pressure sensation turning the master volume dial, even with dynamic EQ engaged.
So lastly, we discussed last week Gary's question about the leading edge of notes sounding more pronounced and to Gary's ears distracting sometimes, and Rob's take was that it was more likely to be distortion as opposed to faster transient response. But we've also talked about delineation and being able to separate individual instruments or voices, or hearing better musical articulation. We say that better delineation, separation, and articulation are indicators of a higher performance design in the speaker, even if they actually end up sounding different versus live performance. Why would they sound different versus live?
Well, because not every live venue actually has great acoustics. A lot of live venues are reverberant, and you don't get the trailing edge of notes rings out for quite a while in a lot of actual live venues. That can definitely be the case.
But everything is recorded someplace. It's usually not recorded in a vacuum or on a computer.
But in a studio recording session, I mean, sometimes they're literally recording individual instruments and putting it together, and there's no reverb on the original recording. That can definitely be the case in a studio recording. I mean, to me, there's sort of an objective accuracy, because we can see the signal. You can look at the signal as a waveform and say, well, here is what the signal said to do. And if the signal said stop and the speaker comes really, really close to stopping exactly when the signal said to, then objectively, that's a more accurate speaker. To me, that is a higher performance speaker that can do that versus some other speaker that simply cannot stop when the signal said stop. It has too much inertia and an inability to control its moving parts to actually stop when the signal said stop.
Well, the suggestion here, at least if I'm reading this question correctly from Gary, is like, if they recorded it in a studio and they put it all together on the computer and it, everything stops exactly when they want it to stop, but that doesn't sound like live would sound. That is the intent of the recording artist, and that is what they wanted you to hear. In which case, I am not going to buy a speaker
that makes it sound
so that it will make something that make everything sound like is reverberant and live, even when it wasn't. Because then when you listen to something live, then what is it going to sound like? It's like taking a live recording and then using one of those Yamaha DSP rock
that's
arena
just it.
things on it, and you're like,
I was going to say how there was the time in the early days of Pioneer's first attempts at room correction where their whole goal was to try and make your room sound like a different room. They had a target room, and that was like the goal. And it's not as though that target room was some perfect, ideal acoustic environment. It was just a room that they really liked. And so, you can't really blame someone for saying like these notions have been out there and they've been marketed in that. So I can understand where he's coming from. But yeah, to me, it's a matter of there's an objective accuracy. And to me, if the closer you get to objective accuracy, to me, that's the higher performance design. How that ends up sounding, you might not necessarily like.
Right. That's neither here nor there. The objective truth in this is that your speaker should play only what it's asked to play and nothing else. That means that if it's asked to play a live recording, it will sound like a live recording. If it's asked to play a studio recording, it will sound like a studio recording. If it's asked to play, female vocals, it'll sound like a female
or a synthesized sound that doesn't exist in nature. Yeah,
that's right. It just should do what it's asked to do and nothing more. The minute it starts doing something more that is inaccurate and it is it's not necessarily distortion, but it's definitely corrupting the experience that you're supposed to be having.
It's a type of distortion. It has distorted the original signal. Yeah.
Right. All right, Christian. So we mentioned in the news last week a number of still in theaters and day and date movies are now being released for rental or purchase on streaming and download platforms. Christian is in California. He's trying to figure out which platform is his best choice if he wants to purchase some of these movies. The discs still won't be released for a couple of months. So if he wants to see these movies right away, he's going to start buying them online. His own research suggests that Apple Movies, iTunes, has the most 4K HDR, including Dolby Vision and Atmos, as well as one of the biggest content libraries overall, but he really doesn't want anything to do with Apple. I don't blame you. They're kind of evil. So what's the best alternative? Vudu, Amazon, which would be the most convenient in his case, he says. What do we say? The only day and date thing I've actually seen is Amazon. Not day and date, but the only new release stuff I've seen that has been easily accessible has been Amazon. But I haven't actually opened Vudu at all.
It's across pretty much all of them at this point. Like these particular ones, like with Trolls coming out, that was going to be a day and date release from its original, and Birds of Prey came out much earlier online than originally intended, and a bunch of other movies too, Onward and stuff like that. I'll just mention, by and large, I agree with the research that you did. Apple Movies does have the biggest content library overall, the most 4K HDR, and Atmos for sure. They definitely have the most Atmos. But the big exception there is Disney, because Disney refuses to let Apple sell the 4K HDR versions of anything that's owned by Disney at the same price as the HD version, which is what Apple says they want to do. They're like, whether it's HD or 4K, we're charging the same price. And Disney's like, no, you have to charge $5 more. And they're at an impasse, and you can't get like any of the Marvel movies, any of the Pixar movies, anything owned by Disney in 4K HDR on iTunes right now. So that's a huge chunk of movies that aren't available there. Quality wise, Vudu is definitely your best choice. Aside from iTunes, it's got the most 4K HDR. It definitely has the most Atmos of anything other than iTunes. And they have Disney's movies in 4K HDR with Atmos on Vudu. The only fly in the ointment to me with Vudu is that they're owned by Walmart right now. Walmart is definitely looking to sell off Vudu, and it looks like the front runner for buying them is Comcast, and I have no faith that Comcast will continue making Vudu an attractive service.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, Vudu, iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, they're all part of Movies Anywhere. So even if you buy your movie on Vudu right now and you enjoy the best quality that you can get the movie in, which will be from Vudu right now, and then Walmart sells it to Comcast and it starts to go downhill, at least if you signed up for Movies Anywhere, you can go and get the same or maybe a slightly downgraded version or whatever, but from another service. You're not completely like without any recourse. So I would probably say Vudu is the way to go if you care about 4K HDR and Atmos, because Amazon, I believe Amazon has one movie available with Atmos that you can actually buy. I think Suspiria is the only one that I could find that actually had Atmos.
Suspiria, you can just stream
it. Yeah. Google Play, similar thing. They basically have no Atmos, and quite a few of the movies are not available in 4K HDR. They only have the HD version on Google Play. As far as which ones do I think will last, like Amazon and Google will probably be around, but Google's one of those companies where they're like, I'm bored of this. Although they'll probably give you your money back, being Google, so they're fairly safe that way. But
I don't know. Yeah, Google's just so it's like the flighty, kid you knew in high school who was like totally into something for a while, and the next thing you know, like, oh yeah,
how's that?
You don't do it. It was like you wore all the T-shirts, you dressed for it this Halloween, you haven't stopped talking about it for 6 months.
How's that Stadia game streaming going for you, right? So I would say go ahead, get your stuff at Vudu because they've got the best quality right now, and then be sure to sign up for Movies Anywhere because it costs you nothing, and now it has populated you across all the various content libraries. So just take the little bit of investment of time to do that, but start at Vudu is what I would say.
Richard on Twitter. Richard has an Epson 5050 UB projector. He read about people using MadVR software on the HTPC, it's a home theater PC, to do HDR tone mapping using a computer before sending the signal to the projector. Would that deliver better results than sending an unaltered HDR10 signal and then letting the Epson 5050 UB handle all the tone mapping?
Yeah.
This seems like you could just buy a Panasonic Ultra Blu-ray player.
Well, I mean, that's doing its HDR optimizer where it's making sure that content never comes out of the player above a certain nit level, but then it's still being tone mapped by the Epson after that.
Yeah.
You can go down a big rabbit hole either way, because the Epson 5050 UB has, if you want to dig into it, it has a ridiculous amount of adjustments that you can make, including it has a gamma graphical section. So you actually see a graph of the gamma that you can manually adjust the curve of the gamma along that graph. You can do that.
That sounds like something you shouldn't.
And then it has a separate HDR10 electro-optical transfer function graph, and both of them are active at the same time, the gamma and the EOTF graph. So you can get granular as all heck if you want to inside of that Epson. You can fall down a total rabbit hole. But by default, what the Epson 5050 UB will do is tone map HDR10 at 1000 nits. Really nice. It'll retain all the detail as long as it doesn't go above 1000 nits. And then you have the extremely convenient one button press on your remote HDR 16-step slider, where if you're like, the whole image looks a little dim on this particular movie, you can brighten the whole thing or dim the whole thing as a whole with that very simple slider. And it does a really nice job. Where I've mostly seen people using MadVR was earlier when we had a whole bunch of projectors that could accept an HDR signal but really couldn't show it to you and really weren't tone mapping well at all. And what most people were finding was that if you converted HDR to SDR, you got a much better image. But a lot of people said, well, my projector does a bad job with an HDR signal, but I still want the wide color. And MadVR also let you do that. It let you take the wide color, but convert just the HDR part to SDR. And coming out of your home theater PC with everything mapped like that, it looked good on like the early JVCs or the earlier Epsons that could just barely do HDR. They could take the signal, but they couldn't really show it to you. And that tend to work well. The 5050 UB does a pretty darn good job with HDR. I would use MadVR as a last resort. If you can't adjust it inside the Epson itself, I'd be surprised. And then you also then have the advantage of it doesn't matter what your source is. Like MadVR is only going to work with your home theater PC. Any other source,
Right.
that's having no effect. Whereas whatever adjustments you make inside the Epson itself applies to all sources. So I wouldn't start with MadVR. Exhaust what you can do with the 5050 UB. If you can't get it looking right, I guess you could. I don't think you'll need to. It's ridiculous what you can do inside the Epson.
Bobby. First up, Bobby just wanted to let us know that he followed several of our last recommendations to him for his 12x12 theater, and he's enjoying the results. He made some DIY absorption panels, and they made a big difference, he says. He also got a Harmony Hub plus some Philip Hue lights and a Google Home for voice control. He loves how easy it is to control everything now. All right, his question. He has 8 bass shakers installed in the seats, all on the same seat.
I think he's got one in each seat, like bottom and each seat back. I think that's what he's got.
Oh my God, that's a lot of shaking.
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure he doesn't have 8 seats in a 12x12 theater.
All right, he has 8 bass shakers installed in the seats, and he wired them all to a single car audio amplifier using a 12-volt power adapter. It functions, but at higher volume levels, it sometimes shuts down. I can imagine why. So we'd like to get a more powerful amplifier. He's browsed Crown, Dayton, and Bash. A plate amplifier would be okay as he can mount it in his closet, so it looks unconcerned. But a lot of amps are out of stock right now, tentatively backordered until July or whenever China opens their borders again. And ideally, he'd like an amp that makes it easy to adjust the volume while keeping track of his original volume setting. Any suggestions for about $150 or less? The one I've got is not powerful enough, is it? Is it powerful enough?
That'd be a bit iffy, and I guess it does have gain pots on it, doesn't it?
It does have gain pots. I'm looking at it. It's got volume, but there are literally you'd have to get up and go over there and turn the knob. I mean, there's no remote control for the thing, and I don't think there's IR.
No, nothing like that. I mean, the one I was going to suggest to him. So, before I even get to that, there's a chance that the car audio amplifier you're using right now actually could be okay, and it's a matter of exactly what series parallel wiring scheme you use.
Yeah.
Because a lot of car audio amplifiers are actually stable into 2 ohms. But if you've wired all 8 of these in parallel, then I don't even know what fraction of an ohm you'd be at this point, or if you've wired them all in series, the resistance is going to be so high that it could actually be a problem at that point.
So what you kind of want to do with 8 amplifiers, basically. So if you wire something in series, it doubles.
If they're the same. Series. So if you have 2 things that are 4 ohms and you wire them in series, you now have 8 ohms. It was 4 plus 4.
Right. Yeah. So if you have so let's pretend they're 8. So they're
these are bass shakers, so they are 4. They're 4 ohm devices.
Oh, they're 4. Okay. So they're 4 ohms, right? So if you wire 2 of them in series, you've now made an 8 ohm load for the receiver, or in this case the amplifier. If you keep doing that for all of them, it doubles every time.
Well,
so
he'd have he'd be up to 16, right? Because he'd have he'd be up to 32. It'd be 8 and 8, and those would combine into a 16, and then he'd have another 16 and a 16 together, so he'd have a 32 ohm load at this point. If they were all just wired in series together, he'd have a 32 ohm load with 8 4 ohm devices.
So generally what you want to do, so if you wire them in parallel, which means that instead of doing, like we talk about going from the black to the black and the red to the black and the red to the back to the amplifier, that kind of that series thing, instead of wiring them in series, if you wire them in parallel, it halves the load. So instead of having if you wire them in parallel, you've now got, instead of a 4 ohm, you've got a 2 ohm. But if you wire half of them in series and half of them in parallel, you should have a 4 ohm load when you're at the end of the day. You should end up with
8, and then he could get back down to could he get back down to a 4? Because he'd have
you could definitely get to an 8, which would be way better than a 32.
So be an 8. So 2 of them wired in series makes an 8, and then another 2 in series with those makes a 16 total. But then if you wired 2 groups of 4, you'd be back down to 8. So that'd be okay.
Right.
So that's probably the best way to wire these. If you just want to try it again, would be to so you wire 4 of them in series, you wire a second group of 4 in series, and then those 2 groups of 4 you wire in parallel as 2 parallel groups of 4 to give you an 8 ohm load total. Yeah, that would work. Yeah. So you might want to give that a try because this might just be a wiring issue.
I don't know if your binding posts could handle all these wires.
Well, it's not really. If you do that, it's not really that. You're only talking about 2 leads out of each binding post, and then the rest are all series along to each other. Yeah. So that's not that bad. This might just be a wiring thing. Give that a try first, because that costs you no money, just some time to rewire. But if that doesn't work, so I was going to point you to Dayton's APA 150. Which is actually a stereo amplifier. It can be bridged, but I think you might actually want to run this in stereo. Because again, by using some combination series parallel wiring, you could have 2 channels of 4 ohms each. Right? Because you'd put 2 of the bass shakers in series, so that makes an 8 ohm. And then you put another 2 in series, so you have 2 8 ohms, but you'd wire those in parallel to 1 channel, so you got a 4 ohm load on that channel, and then the same thing on the second channel. So you have 2 4 ohm loads, and this amplifier is designed for 4 ohm loads. That's what it wants, is 4 ohm loads. It's $150. It's 150 watts, and it's it's not remote control, but it has a very obvious volume dial on the front of it. That is, if you want to mark, just put a little mark with a pen or something like that, and that's where your thing is set. That should be sufficient for like the Aura bass shakers. It should be fine. It's all the things you want, and it should work. Just got to pay attention to that wiring.
I think either way you're going to end up with a bit of a wiring conundrum. So I would stick with what you've got right now and
try to rewire
make sure your wiring is correct before you buy something else. Might save you some money there. Ted on Twitter. What is a good method for ABX blind testing 2 different headphone amps? Ted could swear he hears a difference between his Audio Quest Dragonfly Red versus his Topping DX3 Pro, but he knows it could potentially be in his head, so he wants to do a blind comparison. Physically unplugging and plugging in his headphone back and forth doesn't really seem like the right approach, though, right? So any ideas? You can't do that way. You can. You have a very low. We have like 3 seconds before we can a window of remembering
barely that
how things sound
and
back and
there'd
forth.
be some noise when you do that. There'd be like a type of noise as you do it.
Yep, and then you got to make sure that each one is exactly the same
volume level matched, which is challenging.
Which is challenging to say the least. And then how are you ABXing it?
Not alone.
Not alone, you're not. Because it's, so for those of you who don't know what ABX is, it comes from a device, essentially, which it had an A button, a B button, and an X button. And then a computer or something would control it, and you pressed A to hear the A thing, whatever the A thing was, a speaker or a headphone or a CD player or whatever, and the B would play the B thing, whatever that was, and the X would play a random thing. And the random thing would either be the same as A or the same as B, or sometimes A and B were both the same because it was randomized. So A and B could both be the same, and X could be the same as both of them, and then you would say, which one does it sound more like?
And people will still give you an answer, because that's what people do.
They'll give you an answer, whether you like it or not. So that is a device that exists. It seems like this is something that you would require a device for as well.
Yeah. Now, this isn't an ABX testing device, and to do an ABX test, you'd still have to have a friend help you to do this. That would really be the only way to do it. But there is a device. There's a company called AVRant. They make little headphone amplifiers and microphone preamps and stuff like that. That's what they make. And they have a device called the Split Mix 4. And the Split Mix 4 is for stereo 1/4-inch inputs. And the back of this thing is confusing as all get out, because it can act as either a splitter or a mixer. And they've put little arrows on like each plug to like tell you whether it's an input or an output, and it looks like a mess on the back of this thing. But basically, if you just say, I'm going to plug everything in along the top, then now it's a splitter, one input to multiple outputs. Or if I put everything along the bottom row of things, it's now a mixer, multiple inputs to a single output, which is what you'd be doing. You'd be doing multiple inputs to a single output. Now, you would have to have a friend basically turn the pots on the front. You'd have to mark exactly where those pots need to go so that you get the exact same volume level. But why this could work is because this is a completely passive device. It doesn't plug into anything. It has no electrical power. It has no circuitry inside except for potentiometers to, it can basically only attenuate the signal. There's no amplifier in there. It can just make things quieter.
Right.
That's all this device can do. So because it's not touching the signal in any way other than turning it down, which is what you want to be able to do, because you want to be able to keep both amplifiers playing at all times, both of them feeding into one pair of headphones at the same time, but you're able to turn one of them all the way down while you turn the other one up to exactly the right level where when you switch them, the two different source devices will come out at exactly the same volume level in your headphones. It would take a long time to set this up properly. You'd need a friend to help you,
right.
But it could do the job.
You would need some sort of random number generator that would generate a 1,
sure,
a 1 and a 2.
Yeah,
basically.
That's not hard.
And that's not hard. That's easy to get. But then you would need to be able to level match each one of the inputs, which would be from the two different amps things. Yeah. Right. Wow, what a nightmare. Yeah, good luck. Let us know how it works out if you get it working. All right, this is from Jorge, which apparently we were pronouncing correctly, which is good. I like saying Jorge. I don't know why. I just feel like that's a fun name to say. Jorge and his friends are having virtual movie nights. And he highly recommends it as this way they can still watch and laugh together while staying physically apart. They pick a movie and all start at the same time while chatting on Google Hangouts. That still works?
I don't know.
Hangouts is still a thing?
I've heard more than one person reference talking on Google Hangouts still.
Did they turn it back on when I wasn't looking?
Well, it's the Google Hangouts importing automatically into YouTube that went away. So, yeah.
Oh. Anyways. So at the moment, Jorge is simply using headphones connected to his laptop for the chat part of things while turning up the volume on his surround sound set up loud enough to hear it through his headphones. But he'd like to be able to just have all of the audio going into his headphones, and a big bonus would be the ability to control the volume of the chat and the volume of the movie independently. His laptop has a headphone jack, and his Denon X3400H has a headphone jack. So is there a way to plug both of those sources into one pair of headphones? That's just a mixer.
Yeah.
That's all that is.
And I mean,
that
actually, you could use the very same thing we just talked about.
I was going to say, that last thing, wouldn't that last thing work? Just two inputs going into one output?
Because, two separate inputs that you can mix, and you can mix their relative volume levels. So, I mean, you have the volume control on your laptop, how loud its headphone jack is. You have the volume control on your Denon, how loud its headphone jack is. And then you can attenuate either or both of them with the split mix. So that could totally work. The Art Split Mix 4 could work for you. There's another device, though, that's actually even less expensive, even though it's powered. And the only reason I'm bringing this up, it's called the Just Mixer 2. It's only like $50. The reason I'm bringing it up is because it can actually take a USB audio input. So it makes it even easier, for your computer, because you have it as a USB audio device, and then it will take a headphone, or it'll actually take two headphone inputs, and again, relative volume sliders plus a master volume on this device as well. So either one of those will work. That's really all you need, is a mixer of some sort. But I brought up the Just Mixer 2 simply because it has a USB input and might be even easier for your computer. It also draws its power from USB, and we know you're going to be using a computer, so it should work for you.
Right. That's not bad. So that's about $50. The other thing was like 65. Right. So there you go. Damien's been spending a lot of time in his basement theater. Yeah, I wonder why. Maybe he's sick and he's been quarantined there.
I hope not. He's got a bunch of people in his house, so hope none of them are ill whatsoever.
That's good. I told my family I wanted to be quarantined in the home theater, and they all said I could not. I was like,
now you finally found the downside of only one TV in your house, huh?
Where am I going to be quarantined if I get sick? They're like, oh, my wife's like, you can be quarantined in the bedroom. I'm like, where are you going to sleep? She goes, don't worry about it.
She's got options.
You don't even like watching TV as much as I do. Oh my God. All right. Anyway, so good to hear you're healthy, Damien, and everybody else. He used a wreath hanger to mount an absorption panel on his door, and he hung a matching panel on his right side wall. He has 2 more panels, aside from future bass traps, that he can mount somewhere. So he tried to figure out a way to put one basically over his window on the left side and then match that on the right side wall. So he's got one on the door. What is that on the what? The door.
Yeah, so the door is his left wall. If you're seeing that there, that's his left
Okay,
wall,
see,
and then
yeah.
he's got a curtain over the window, which is farther towards the back of the room. He's got a window there. There's a little bit of wall space in between the door and the window. Now, I mean, matching whatever he does on the left-hand side on the right-hand side is no problem. Blank wall on the right-hand side, so that's no issue.
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly would say that those are decent locations for a second panel because covering more of your sidewall.
But
makes
what about
sense.
the back of the?
Well, he's going to be
or
putting bass traps
behind
back
the
there,
thing?
so.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if you can,
Yeah.
I mean, if not, then just
I
put them
mean,
someplace else.
You could basically do another hanger like from your curtain rod. It kind of looks like.
Yeah, it depends on how
It
strong your
does.
curtain. My curtain rods cannot handle a 4-inch
Right.
thick bass trap. You know, if it was thinner than that, it would be.
Well,
fine.
yeah. I mean, the panels he made are only 2-inch thick, so you probably
Yeah.
could. You probably could just get more wreath hangers if that worked, and hang them from your curtain rod, and then just match that on the right hand side. That's certainly on the right hand side. I'm not worried at all. But I do think that's a good location for 2 more panels. Yeah.
Sure, that'd be fine. The back of the room, the back wall is not completely flat. One side corner comes up in at an angle, and at the front of the room, since he went with a large 120-inch screen, which forces left and right speakers wider, he doesn't have room to straddle bass traps in the corner. So we also said he should move the subs at the back of his room out of the rear left corner and a bit towards the middle to match how he moved the sub at the front of his room, inward from the front right corner. I remember this. So if he makes some 6-inch thick bass traps, will they still work okay if they're mounted flat on the walls instead of straddling the corners? Well, I mean, they don't have to match on both sides. Nope. Just put it in the corner that you can put them in, and then on the other one, don't. And you know, I mean, these are DIYs.
These are DIY.
He bought these?
He's making them himself.
I mean, you can chunk trap it too, and it doesn't have to be 6 inches straddling a corner. You could just.
I think there's a very common misconception about corner bass traps that they like have to go in the corner, that they have to straddle the corner, that's the point. No, the reason corner bass traps came up as a thing is simply because they're geometrically efficient. What we actually care about is covering as much surface area as we can with as thick absorption and air gap behind that absorption as we can get. The thicker the absorption and the more air gap behind it and the more surface area covered with that thickness, the more bass we're able to absorb. And by straddling a corner, you're simply using geometry to your efficiency advantage. It's not that it's better. It's not that you can't put a panel flat against a wall and still have it be a bass trap. It's just efficient to straddle a corner. That's all. So don't worry if you can't straddle a corner, but you can still put a nice thick panel in a corner, even though it's flat against the wall in the corner. That's totally fine. It doesn't have to straddle the corner.
Yeah. We get kind of locked into these ideas of, it's got to be symmetrical or it's got to be this. It's like, dude.
The bass doesn't care. The bass is going all around that room multiple times before you ever get to hear it. And the more you can knock that energy down, the more you're reducing the reverberation time in your room.
Yeah. We're perfectly fine with you putting in, like my bass traps are too tall. The tri-traps I have are too tall to go floor to ceiling, one on top of each other. So they're just all floor level. And they straddle the lower corners because that's where I can put them. I'm not going to kill myself trying to figure out how I can make them all the way up to the ceiling. I just don't care that much. So he hasn't had much luck finding a way to purchase RBH in ceiling speakers. Have you tried?
No, we've suggested it.
Whatever. I know. And he'd prefer to keep the price lower anyways, which would be lower if you became a dealer like we asked. These will be going in his drop tile ceiling, so he needs brackets to hold the speakers. Plus, he would much prefer to have back cans, which he wouldn't really need in this situation, but okay. So would the Monoprice Caliber in ceilings be a good enough match for his Ascend SE speakers? They have all the parts needed, T-bar brackets and back cans and all of that at an attractive price, and they're just for Atmos. So do the speakers need to be any better than these? I have no idea what speakers these are, but I'm going to say these are fine.
Yeah, for Atmos, they're fine. You know, if you took these speakers and you put them side by side with the Ascends and you A/B compared them as your front, left, rights, you would notice a downgrade in the sound. These are not a perfect match. The Monoprice Caliber are basically their entry level, but they are very attractive in that they have all the parts you need. You can buy it as a package, very attractive price. And for Atmos, they're fine, man. They're fine.
And I'm much more comfortable with people getting being like, oh, I'm just going to get the cheap stuff for my Atmos when I have a drop tile ceiling where I could swap them out with almost no effort on my part and very little cost, as opposed to people who are like, I'm building a custom theater and I've got $7,000 a pair front speakers. What's the cheapest overheads I could possibly get? You're like, okay, come on, guy. Come on. So he decided to keep all of his gear at the front of the room below his screen rather than paying for a rack at the back of the room and going through the hassle of rewiring everything. If his center speaker goes on top of the new TV stand, the maximum height could be 24 inches. He needs more shelf space up front for all of his components, so do we have any suggestions? I guess you already looked at Sanus, because that was going to be my suggestion. There's also custom.
Sure.
You could
there's like custom. Salamander, but price is pretty high for those.
But I'm honest, dude. This is a buyer's market right now. There are plenty of people, handyman,
that's true,
and ladies in town right now who are like, I will build you whatever.
And this is not a super complicated thing you're asking to build. You're
like, you literally don't want to back on it. It's not even a full piece of furniture. There's one whole side that you don't want included.
A base, a top, and probably one middle shelf in there, and however wide is exactly wide enough. Because we do know he has his subwoofer up at the front of the room now, so it's not the entire width of his screen. He needs a little bit less width than that. I'm guessing he needs somewhere in the range of about 85 inches wide to sort of maximize the amount of space that he has. If you were just to buy something, I like Z-Line. They make nice TV stands in that. They have a model called the Electra, which is in various widths. Now, what I would maybe suggest to you is getting 2 of the 40-inch wide Electras, because there's like a 55 and a 70, but neither of those is like really as wide as you probably want. The two 40-inch wide Electras, if you put them side by side, you could fit 4 standard components across each shelf. And they're 22 inches high, so they're like pretty much the exact perfect height that you mentioned. And sitting side by side, they'll look nice. Now, the thing is, over at Fry's, they are clearing them out for $60 each, which I don't think I've ever seen a nice TV stand for $60.
I don't think you're going to be able to get anything custom made, no matter how bad the market is right now.
And these are pretty nice. They're tempered glass. So, they're wood. They're pretty good. So the Z-Line Electra in the 40-inch width, but grab 2 of them. It's still only $120 if you grab them from Fry's.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good deal. I'll be honest with you. I'm looking at the time. Okay. So he still gets Ultra HD Blu-ray discs, but if he's being honest, he rarely uses the physical discs and just uses the digital copies most of the time. But now with 7 people home all the time and using the internet, streaming isn't the best choice, and he's trying to use his physical discs. But his Xbox One S doesn't seem to play too nice with this Epson 5040 UB. Should he get a dedicated player? If so, which one? It doesn't?
Well, it's going to be...
the one thing I haven't had many problems with my Xbox is it playing discs. Like, that's the one thing they didn't screw up. Oh, the game part is okay too, I suppose. But the discs, the
issue is going to be the Xbox One S connected to an Epson 5040 UB. We have to remember the 5040 UB cannot do 4K 60 with HDR, but the Xbox One S is going to try to, because the Epson does report itself as a 4K accepting device and an HDR accepting device, but it's limited to 4K 24 or 4K 30 with HDR, and that's sort of where the Xbox One S gives you some issues, because if you set it to 4K and you set HDR HDR to on, it's like, but I can't do 4K 60 HDR. So I mean, the Panasonic UB420 is the ideal companion for the 5040 UB if you want to get a separate player. The other thing you could do, since this is Damien, we've talked to him multiple times before, and we've brought up the idea, and he's not opposed to it, and maybe he has some time to do this while he's in his theater all this time, would be to set up a Plex server. Because if you were to take the same amount of money, in fact less, and purchase an Ultra HD Blu-ray drive to connect to your computer so that you can back up your Ultra HD Blu-rays and set up a Plex server, you'd need some kind of playback device. So maybe you're getting an NVIDIA Shield because that's the best one. At that point, if you grab an NVIDIA Shield and an Ultra HD Blu-ray drive for your PC, it might be more than a UB420 in total. But that's the other option I'm thinking of.
And that assumes that he has all the storage that he would need for all these Ultra,
which are big.
Blu-rays. And if you're going to back all this stuff up, you would want to have at least some sort of RAID array so that if something craps out, you don't lose everything and have to redo the whole thing, which would be the kind of nightmare that I don't want to live through. Nick wrote us last time regarding his region-free Oppo BDP-83 Blu-ray player. When he connected it to his Denon X3600H and connected his Denon to his OLED, the whole image from his Oppo was tinted purple. Rob suggested trying the different RGB and YCB CR color space options, and it turned out that setting the Oppo to RGB output got the image to look correct. So good. But now there doesn't seem to be any audio. That literally should not have changed.
It shouldn't. I even went through because I was like, does setting it to RGB output make it like default to like a PC mode where it doesn't send audio anymore? No, there's no mention of that. Nothing like that.
It's like, are you my father? I think you're my mother. This is the sort of stuff that happens to my dad. My dad's like, I'm like, okay, well, I fixed this thing. He goes, okay, now, and this literally happened. So we set up that sound bar,
right? I kind of wanted to ask about that. The Hios bar.
The Hios bar, and it's great. They ended up they bought a mount so that they could mount it to the TV above. They went above the TV, so they have the stuff, and then they got lazy and just said, "Oh, we're going to put it on top of this TV stand thingy here." I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So they put it there, and everything's fine. But now they are noticing that the Blu-ray player randomly goes on and off.
That's got to be a CEC
thing.
It
just. Well, that's what I thought too, and it could be. But the reality is I mean, first of all, this started happening right. I got that thing hooked up right before everything hit the fan, so I haven't been over there much. I've been over there a couple times, but walk in, wash my hands, don't really touch anything. But they're just physically turning on and off. I think it's a code that is similar or the same that's overlapping somehow, because this is something that they've had problems before with. Like, they have a Cisco cable box that doesn't always turn on or off or whatever, and they've got the IR blaster like hanging right in front of the IR receiver. Like, it's got to be receiving it. I actually think there might be like the walls are too light and the IR is like reflecting everywhere and then hitting it more than once. That sort of thing. So I'm like, is it the big deal for you just to go over there and just turn the thing off? I mean, who cares? And they're like, yeah, we can just turn it off. I'm like, okay, fine. Anyways, but there doesn't seem to be audio via HDMI. He made sure to set the Oppo to bitstream output for HDMI and turn secondary audio off so that True HD, DTS, HDMA, Atmos, and DTS-X should work, but no sound. Any suggestions? He said there's also options for RGB PC level, RGB video level, which is correct. I don't know.
It should definitely be video level on that last one. And I mean, I look, because I was like, is there any chance that setting it to RGB puts it into some PC mode where now it only outputs the audio via a separate audio output or something? But nope, it should work. The audio should work. So I mean, like, we know.
I literally don't have any clue how this could possibly. There must. It's like, I mean, you can see it, so we know the cable is actually physically plugged in. I mean, I don't know.
The audio cables, because we know we got new HDMI cables, but because he's tried swapping it with other ones that work with his other devices. So the other devices are working fine, and he's used their HDMI cables to connect his Oppo. And now the video is looking fine, having set it to RGB output, which is unusual that it has to be RGB, but we know it can function. But now the audio just isn't working. So here's about the only thing I can suggest to you. Both your OLED and your Denon do have so like in the OLED, it's the Ultra HD Deep Color setting, which is what you want when you're connecting up 4K Blu-ray or a 4K video game system. And your Denon has the enhanced signal setting for the HDMI input. Now, it's going to be a real pain if this is what fixes it, but try turning both of those things off, because his Oppo is a Blu-ray player. It's not an Ultra HD Blu-ray player. It's a 1080p Blu-ray player. So try turning off the Ultra HD Deep Color in your LG and try turning off the enhanced signal part of your Denon. And if it all works then unfortunately it is your Oppo like not playing nice with HDMI 2.0. That's essentially what's going on there, which is a thing that they warn about. The only place I've really seen it is with 3D, because 3D will not work with those things active. But it could be the case that this Oppo is reacting that way. That's all I got at this point.
It's so bizarre to have it just start doing this. You know?
Well, I mean, we know that his Oppo is a region-free modified one that he actually had to send in for repair because something was broken. And I'm like, I don't know if I entirely trust that Oppo player, like that particular unit anymore, because it's had issues and it's been modified.
Right. I don't know. This is like the time when many years ago, before I got into audio, and I got like a boom box or something like that, and it was like, this thing doesn't work. And, press play, no sound comes out. And I take it in to return it, and the guy looks at it and turns the volume up. I'm like, oh, shut up.
But through HDMI, there's no volume control on the Oppo for the HDMI.
Well, I know, but Could he have accidentally changed the setting someplace where it resets the volume to 0 whenever it goes to this particular
I would definitely
input?
try on the Oppo, just like do a full reset and even go through the wizard, because it includes a wizard for setup. Like I would try doing that at this point, because something's weird here.
Yeah, very strange. Can we suggest a good TV wall mount for his 77-inch OLED that will let him pull it forward from the wall at least 24 inches, perhaps as much as 30 inches? Dang, dude. It's out there. He'd also like it to sit as close to flush on the wall when it's pushed in. He wants a mount that's strong enough that he won't sag at all when the TV is extended out, and he doesn't care about swivel or tilt. Any suggestions? That's a very long range.
Pretty long.
I mean, it's not outrageous, but it's 30 inches.
There are even longer
getting out there. So, the jokes write themselves here. So
Sanus. Definitely going to go Sanus. The normal model number is the VLF 628, and 28 refers to how much it can extend. It can extend 28 inches. So not quite 30, but more than 24 should be fine. And when you push it all the way back in against the wall, it's only 3 inches deep, and that's about as close to a flush that a full articulating mount can get. Will hold...
You might have to get a special HDMI cable for your display so that has a right angle.
It'll hold up to 150 pounds, and OLEDs, even the 77 inches, are nowhere near that. And there are actually some people who mention it's a little bit on the stiff side to make all of the movement adjustments, but that sounds like exactly what he wants, because he wants something that's not easily to move around. He doesn't even want swivel and tilt, and everyone's like, it's a little bit stiff to move. You kind of have to two-hand it, push it, but like that sounds like exactly what he wants. So the VLF 628 you can definitely find at $250 is the regular price. You can typically find them for close to $200 on Amazon. It's $230, for example. But there is also the variant that they call the BLF 228, which is the Best Buy only version of it. But it's the exact same mount. They just gave it a different model number, so they don't have to price match. But you can usually find one of those two models for right around $200.
And there's all the usual suspects here that you could look into, which is Chief. I don't know
They'd
if
be more expensive.
What they do
I mean, they're the
Oh, they're not going to be
They're
cheap.
the higher
that's
end
for sure.
version of Sanus, still owned by Sanus. There's Peerless. I'm not sure, they might have something nice too. But in terms of like value and then like really solid build and then pretty close to the wall and then 28-inch extension, I'm like this fits and it's widely available. So the VLF 628 from Sanus.
There you go. John on Twitter. John asks, what surge protector power conditioner would we recommend for a system with an AV receiver, Monoprice amp, Apple TV 4K, and a few other items? Well, are the other things like a blender or a toaster
I hope not.
oven? Because the APC J series, whatever J1 you
yeah, and the J1s are all battery backup units, but we really like having battery backup around here. It's so darn handy to have a battery backup. Now, my normal go-to is the J35. That gives you full voltage regulation. It gives you 6 battery backup outlets. Is it 6?
Okay.
I think it's 6.
Sounds right.
Battery backup outlets, a nice long battery life on those, but those battery backup outlets are limited to 12 amps. They don't let through the full 15 amps. So for your Monoprice amplifier and probably your AV receiver or maybe your subwoofer, they do have 2 surge-only 15 amplifier outlets on the J35. So those don't get battery backup, but they do still get full surge protection and noise filtration, and they let through the full 15 amps. That's my normal go-to. If the J35 costs too much, there is the J25. Very, very similar, but it does not have voltage regulation, and it has a smaller battery. That's what lowers the price on the J25 versus the 35. Now, if you want battery backup for everything, including your high-power Monoprice amplifier, there is the older J15. So even though the number is smaller, it's smaller because it's an older model, not because it's a lesser model. The J15 has 12 battery backup outlets, 2 of which are battery backup 15 amp outlets. So they're the full power and battery backup. So you might want to do that. Now, if you're like, I don't want battery backup, I asked for a surge protector. He did put in power conditioner. But if it's like, if all you want is a surge protector, then I like APC's P8V because it lets through the full 15 amps and it's very affordable.
There you go. Yeah, I have with the H series.
You have the H.
But I don't plug myself
Yeah, so
into
the
it.
H is exactly like the J, but without a battery. That's what the H is.
Yeah. Tony heard us talking about the 1/3 rule and how having your seat smack dab in the middle of your room creates acoustical issues. And he went, "Oh my god,
My
room." His room is 19 feet long, and his ears end up being 10 feet from the front wall. So he's not exactly halfway, but it's darn close. Is there any tolerance as to how far from the exact middle you need to be in order to avoid acoustical issues? He has noticed that his bass response doesn't seem to be the greatest where he's sitting right now. The most he could push his seats farther back is 9.5 inches. Would doing that be likely to help in his setup? It wouldn't hurt. That's for sure. So again, the rule of the 1/3 rule or whatever, it's a best practices thing. So yeah, we're not going to be like, get out the ruler, get out the laser measurer and stuff like that and try to get this thing dead on, your ears dead on 1/3, whatever. But you being so close to the center of the room is certainly not helping your experience. Yeah. That being said, it's not about just where your seat is. So if you're in a fully reflective room with non-optimally placed speakers and subwoofers and no room treatments whatsoever, and you're like, I'm going to move my seat 9.5 inches back, and now that's going to sound better. I'm going to say you're about to be disappointed, sir. So, because it's not going to get that much better.
It could make a difference, though. I mean, and being that it's literally just pushing a seat back, and if it doesn't work, putting it back where you have it now shouldn't be the most difficult thing in the world as far as just moving a seat. I would certainly give it a try because it costs you no money.
Yeah, I would too.
Not really very much time or effort, so absolutely give it a try. I'm not going to tell you it's not worth trying at all. 10 feet in a 19-foot long room, you could definitely still be within the region where you're having some cancellation issues that even with multiple subwoofers would be difficult to rectify at that right in the middle of the room location. It's it's very hard to rectify right in the middle of the room, and you are very close. So the in this case, sort of the farther away from the exact middle that you can get, probably the better. But I don't know if Tony has more than one subwoofer. You might have only one subwoofer, and doing a subwoofer crawl, if you have only one subwoofer, might also help you greatly in this instance. Yeah, because it can certainly be that.
Regardless, I would get out of the center of the room.
Yeah. Always get out of the center of the room.
I would get out of the center of the room. And then, everything else we're talking about on this podcast, I mean, we're all about saving people money, but we're all about getting good sound too. So, getting some Gick Acoustics DIY kits, or just buying the installation from them and then putting together some room treatments can make a massive difference in this room.
If you don't have 2 subs yet, 2 subs can make a huge difference.
Yeah, but 2 subs tends to be a little bit more expensive.
It can
than buying
be
a little bit of insulation. Brian is. I've read the first 2 sentences of this question. I'm like, we'll see how this goes. So, those of you that think that I play off not preparing for this podcast, I really don't. And it's not because
I didn't give you much choice today. I didn't finish these questions until like 5 minutes before we started. So,
Rob, let's be honest. It was like, Rob, you need to get the questions done by such and such a time, and we'll cut the time off then, and then whatever. It would be he would do that. That is not the problem. The problem is Rob's like, he ain't gonna look at them anyways, so why do anything before the last minute?
And there are other things in my schedule.
Fine. Of course, he's got a lot of stuff going on. You haven't heard there's a pandemic going on. So, but I would love. I mean, sometimes I do have a chance to read through all the questions first and do a little bit of research, and I feel so much better about myself when I do that. But today was 6 straight hours of yelling at kids to go look at a computer screen, the thing they want to do all the time, anyways, to do their classwork. And my 14-year-old son, he had a birthday during the pandemic. He get nothing for his birthday. That's what he got. He got nothing.
Sad face.
He was also grounded. So there's a lot of stuff going on for that kid. But he was like, we were like, go do your class. He goes, it doesn't start till 1:30. We're like, it's 1:40. So yeah, I swear I will put more effort in someday. Today is not that day. So Brian's going for total overkill. When his room is finished, it will be 11 by 12 by 7.
That's about my room size. My den in my apartment. That's about the size I'm dealing with.
That's little. But he will be using 5 tower speakers with 250 watts of amplifier power for each of them, and dual 15-inch
dual 18-inch subwoofers.
Yes. Oh, 18-inch. Sorry, I misread that. So are there 2 18-inch subs in each of them? Or there are going to be 2 subs that have 18-inch drivers? 2 subs.
Each of them is an 18-inch driver, and quite large 5 tower speakers, 250-watt amplifiers for each tower speaker.
So going into this home theater is going to be much like mounting a motorcycle sidecar. Anyways, there's no talking him out of this. I guess Rob's already tried, and I definitely would have as well, because this is a non-optimal idea. As somebody who just switched from tower speakers in a room bigger than yours to bookshelves and will never, ever regret it, I am telling you, you should not do this, but you're going to. So soundproofing is not a big concern. That's good. And that being the case, he's considering filling the joist bays in the ceiling with insulation. They're 7 inches deep, and then leaving the ceiling acoustically transparent. That way, the entire ceiling could essentially be a bass trap. It's not going to trap all the bass you need to trap in this one. The hard part is finding the part between 0 and 1 on the dials for your subwoofers that the volume will need to be set at. That's going to be your real challenge. Just the micrometer you'll need to control this thing. For a room this small, would that be a good idea, or would it kill his bass response?
Nope, there's not much you could do.
There is literally nothing that could kill your bass response.
This whole room could just be lined with 16-inch thick insulation, and you will still have more bass headroom than you could ever possibly need.
How in what world would it 2 18-inch subs in a 12 by 11 and a half foot by 12 by 11 by 7 foot room? What could you possibly put in there that would kill that bass response?
Right.
I mean, other than like a trap door that would open underneath the subs and drop them into a lake. I mean, there's literally nothing.
But to me, the bigger question is,
yes,
is this what we want to do to this ceiling? You know, I mean, do we want to just have open rafter ceiling? Is that what we want to do?
We don't want to have 5 tower speakers with 250 watts of power each and overkill subwoofers.
I see where
for no reason.
The issue of, if you finish this room, drywall everything, then where do you put acoustic treatments? Because now you're shrinking the internal dimensions even more. So I see the thinking of, okay, I'm just going to leave one of these normally hard surfaces open, and that's just all going to be insulation. Acoustically speaking, what you're suggesting is fine. But from a structural point of view, is this what we want to do? Just have a completely open ceiling? Because there's got to be something in those joist bays. I've never seen a room that doesn't have air duct, a pipe, something up in those joist bays. Do we actually just want to leave it?
I mean, I think the idea is that he's going to put fabric on top of all this.
Or thin tiles or something, like whatever it is, that the air can still get up to that insulation so that it acts as a base trap.
Well, I mean, with only a 7-foot height to begin with, you can't hang anything from the ceiling at all, period. I still don't know where the lights are going to go in this place. I guess the projector will be the lights. You could have
sconces or lamps, or they could be recessed up into those ceiling bays, of course.
He's not going to have... I mean, if he's really going all out with this TV thing and he's going to try to go with a big screen and everything else, he's not going to have much room to put anything anywhere, not with tower speakers everywhere. So, I mean, this is one of the cases where I'd be like, you need a direct view TV. Do not go for a projector.
I went for a 75-inch TV in my room of this size. So that could definitely work. I mean, this idea of the leaving the ceiling bays open and putting acoustic treatment up there, I mean, that's what Infinite Gary did in his room, because he wasn't concerned about soundproofing. He's the only person in his house, and he's like, this is a way that I can do it without decreasing further the internal dimensions of my room. So yeah, acoustically speaking, what you're proposing is fine. It's whether the look and the structure is going to work out for you, but you're definitely not going to have to worry about killing your bass response with it.
Yeah, that's not going to be... I mean, you still want to put more acoustic treatments in this room. Remember, it's 30% of the room, and your ceiling is not 30% of your room. I mean, that's one. Well, in your room, it's a little bit more than 1/6, but still, you need to still consider the first reflection points of your main speakers, and I guess
you still want a spot treat. So sidewall first reflections and your back wall, you still want to treat.
If you can put some sort of bass trapping in the corners too, that would be great. But, good luck. I don't know. It's going to get hot in there, but let's go. Cesar is a very small room, just wide enough for 2 recliners and a walkway, and he sits 10 feet from his front speakers. He was using Clips Reference Premiere, but he decided to sell them since he would sometimes find them fatiguing, and he wanted a change. Okie dokie. He's got a direct view TV of some sort, no speakers up front anymore. Yes. He's got room treatments all the way down the side walls and the back, and on the door in the back. He's got room treatments pretty much everywhere he could fit them in here. So good on you. Looks like a subwoofer in the back right corner and in from the front. Back right corner. Yeah, and in from the front right wall.
Yeah, I don't know if that's where the sub permanently lives though, because he just moved all his speakers out. So there's a chance he just temporarily moved it over there while he was moving a speaker or something.
So he's currently auditioning some SVS Ultra speakers and the Monoprice Monolith THX Ultra speakers. Between the two of them, he likes the Monoprice Monolith speakers a little bit better, but he would still like to audition some other speakers to make sure he gets something he's really happy with. His price point is between $1,000 and $1,500 per pair. Any recommendations? Every single speaker manufacturer in the world has a offering for you.
Pretty much.
This is literally the most popular price point that exists. This is like, I'm into this and I want to spend some serious money, but I don't want to break the bank. $1,000 is what I can.
And you're definitely in a situation where bookshelf speakers will be the absolute correct choice here. So $1,000 to $1,500 per pair of bookshelf speakers. Very, very wide spectrum of choices. But can we whittle it down to some front runners that we really think you should get some ears on with?
Well, it's going to be the usual suspects.
Usual suspects for us, though,
RBH.
Not everybody says these.
Yeah, I'm going to say RBH. RBH, basically, you're guaranteed as you spend more money, you get better quality.
Now, he'd be
from
looking
them.
in the regular signature SV series, not the signature reference. The reference would be too much. Their bookshelves start at $1,800 or $1,900 for a pair, but the regular signature SV series from RBH, which are really, really nice speakers, those are definitely in range. I'm going to suggest, of course, Ascend to you. Now, you can definitely go with the Sierra 1 or the Sierra 1 NRT if what you're looking for is a dome-type tweeter. You could also afford the Sierra 2, which would be right at the very tip-top of your budget range, but you could, and that's with the full ribbon tweeter, the RAL ribbon tweeter. But the other one, you could look at the Sierra Lunas, because your room is small and you're sitting close enough that the front-ported wall-mountable Sierra Lunas, which are more affordable.
You're going to be spoiled for choice here, sir. I mean, we talk about KEF all the time.
Definitely.
We talk about,
AVRant is a good choice because
AVRant
free
audio.
two-way shipping just like SVS. So, I mean, have a listen to the Varus Grand from AVRant no matter what, because it's truly no risk. So there's no reason not to.
And then, I mean, I would normally tell you to go out and listen at your normal places, but don't do that.
Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, if he listened to SVS, Monoprice Monolith, Ascend, Sierra Series, AVRant Varus Grand Series, KEF, either the high-end Q Series or maybe some of the smaller R Series, and the RBH Signature SV Series, and he doesn't find something he likes out of those 6, like, at that point, we know you want something, like, really colored.
Right. So if he were going to get just one or maybe 2 more pairs, what would we say that he should? Well, obviously the AVRants are the easy choice because
completely no risk.
They're free.
Yeah, free shipping both ways. So give them a try no matter what. So they're almost, let's not even worry about counting them because you're going to do it because there's no risk. So do that. AVRant Varus Grands, get some of those. You got to go RBH. If there's any way you can hear some RBHs, you got to hear them. And I'm going to say Ascends. But then, I mean, KEFs are so easy to get. Just get them all. Get them all. Hear them all. He wants to. Here are those 4.
So if it turns out that the Monoprice Monolith speakers remain his favorite at the end of all this, he isn't sure exactly what models to buy. The bookshelf and mini tower models use built-in upward-firing Atmos speakers, but he would never use those. He already has 4 in-ceiling speakers. It seems like a bit of a waste. Could he use the Monolith center as a vertical front left speaker? The tweeter would end up being beside the mid-range driver. If he turns them vertically, would that be a problem? If they tell you can use it as a LCR or a left center right, then you can. If it's not meant to be used that way, I would recommend you not. Mostly because the way that the tweeter is designed is so that the dispersion is such that it is meant to be horizontal.
But in these ones, it's totally fine. Yeah. In these particular ones, the Monoprice Monolith THX Ultra Certified Center, you can totally use them vertically. I mean, visually, it looks a little bit strange. And you got your tweeter beside your mid-range driver, but once you put the grill on, you'll never notice that. So
put the grill on. No one cares. Yeah, put the grill on. His in-ceiling speakers are from Outdoor Speaker Depot, and they use a metal dome tweeter. If his new speakers use soft domes, we have to replace his in-ceiling speakers to have a nice timbre match. Nope.
No. I mean, again, if you were to somehow put them side by side and A/B compare them, then you might notice a timbre mismatch that way. But for Atmos speakers, it just doesn't matter enough.
It literally does not matter. Yeah, it's not important. All right, Lee. This is a new Lee who says he just found our podcast recently and is enjoying our shows. Well, everybody's got a lot of time to listen these days.
You are one of 3 Lees that we know about for sure. Lee O, who is not overstreaming.
I have burnt all of the. In fact, because I got lots of time, I just burnt like a couple more DVDs full of old podcast episodes.
Archived them.
Yeah, I've archived everything, all of it, I believe, almost all of it. So maybe someday I'll do something with it. Anyways, Lee built his theater in a windowless room in his basement. It is 15 by 18 feet. Is it windowless? Is that legal? I thought you had to have a window.
Not everything has to have an egress. You cannot call it a bedroom, but yeah.
There you go. Anyways, it's got a 2.3. Okay, let me try. It's 11:30 at night, guys. He's got a 2.35 to 1 acoustically transparent screen up front from Seymour AV. Good job. 115 inches, and he loves it. Behind that screen in the alcove, he has 3 KEF Q60 center speakers, all standing vertically, and a single SVS PB 2000 sub. He's got the angled KEF Q50s for surrounds and a pair of in-ceiling KEF speakers for a 5.1.2 configuration powered by a Yamaha RX-A 1080 receiver. You already know what we're going to say.
I don't know what we're going to say.
We're going to say you need one more.
Oh, right.
What we're going to say.
Yes.
Yeah. It isn't showing in this photo, but the entire alcove around the subwoofer is filled with Roxol. So that's the insulation. Right. And a really, dog? You're going to go over there and bark? And a plywood platform above his subwoofer holds his 3 front KEF speakers. Should he actually pack that lower alcove area around his subwoofer with sand instead to make the platform holding his KEF speakers completely inert, or should he leave the lower section just filled with insulation? You should not fill it with sand.
No, I mean, I'm sure he heard us talking about stages and risers and platforms and weighing them down with sand to make them inert. But no, in this case, what you've done, so we're not seeing it in the image, but normally that whole lower section is just filled with rock wool insulation. That's good. That's fine. I would say the top also needs insulation. Yes, and since the reason to make a platform inert is so that any vibrations don't actually make the platform vibrate, you need something to damp the bottoms of your speakers.
Subwoofer.
Oh, and your subwoofer.
The
subwoofer looks like it has the isolation feet on it.
The rubber feet. No, I don't think so. I think those are just the rubber little pokey feet.
No, it just comes with the little cone rubber feet. I'm pretty sure those are the cylinder isolation feet.
Okay, if those are not the isolation
get
feet,
the isolation feet. Yeah,
feet.
but you also want to put something below your speakers so that the bottoms of those are damped from the plywood platform on which they are sitting, and put some insulation in the alcove behind your front speakers too.
Yeah, I like that. The room is carpeted, but the walls are all bare. He tried the clap test, and the room is definitely kind of echoey, if that's a word, and it totally is. He tried running YPOW, but he says he basically knows nothing about the best way to EQ his system. It's a blank canvas on the walls to do as he pleases. What do we suggest? We suggest you get another subwoofer and put it on the back of your
room somewhere.
Room directly across and mirrored from your front. Because I imagine the front one, it looks like it's smack dab in the middle of the screen, which means it's smack dab in the middle of the front wall, which means you need one smack dab in the middle of your back wall, which is fine.
It could be a cylinder laying down on its side behind your sofa, by the way.
It could be. And the PC 2000 whatever is
PC
just
2000
laid down
cylinder,
back there.
lying on, you'll never notice it. The photo will look exactly the same. We wouldn't see it from this front end.
That's right. You will not see it. It will be lying on its side. PC 2000, tell them we sent you. Then, as always, we're going to say, get your first reflection points, which you do that by sitting in your main seat, wherever your main seat is, which should be smack dab in front of that center channel. And have your wife or significant other or child or
friend,
well-trained dog run a mirror, a handheld mirror or reflective surface along your wall until you can see your front speaker, left or right, depending on which wall you're on. And once you can see it, that's your first reflection point. You want to put a panel right there. And then you want to put a panel on the other wall in the same place. Then behind you, as many panels.
I mean, pretty much all along that back wall if you could. Because the seating is wide in here, so if you can have panel all along the back wall, that'd be great.
So I would use your first reflection points as sort of a visual guide for where you put panels in this place. So basically, I put one there, and then I would go, okay, I'm going to put one a little bit further over from that one, put another one, and I put another one a little further over from that one. And then in your it looks like he's got something in his corners,
are just shadows,
right?
They're just shadows there.
Those are shadows.
In his rear corners, those are just shadows. Yeah, I know it's tough to tell, but you could definitely put panels basically floor to ceiling in your rear corners, it looks like. They're open.
Yep. Call Gick if you're comfortable doing that, and you get the rock wool for them as well. Call Gick. You can send them a paint sample or
Right.
whatever and have them match.
Or you could just make
the
it black
color.
since your speakers are black and your projector is black.
The speakers are behind the speakers are behind the thing, and they, whatever. Or you can have it be an accent
That's
color,
right.
or you can have them print panels for
Have
you,
images
with,
on them.
fun pictures on them or whatever. So yes, I would as many as you can, and believe me. And then we will. I mean, we can go through the room correction, but you need to do the room treatments and buy the subwoofer.
Yep, side walls, back wall, rear corners, and then having the whole alcove with insulation in it is going to serve you very well.
I think so. You will notice a difference, sir. That is
Particularly that back wall, actually. I think you're really going to notice that.
Yeah, I think so too. Because the seats seem like they're awfully close to the
looks
back wall.
Pretty close. I mean, it looks like he has some space behind his couch there, but they're reasonably close to that back wall. You treat that back wall, you're going to notice your dialogue sounds better.
Yeah. Nathan's father-in-law is a dentist, and he's updating the audio system in his office while no one else is allowed in there. My dentist is closed. Thank God.
Unless you need him.
I mean, I swear, every sadist in the world could work for my dentist. They had one dental hygienist that I loved. Her name was Beth, and I said when she left, I was leaving, and they fired her. And I don't know if they fired her. She doesn't work there anymore. I assume they fired her.
There are potentially other reasons someone leaves a job.
Well, I know that she's not working there anymore, and I know she's not working for anybody else because I tracked her down through Facebook and I found her, and I'm like, "Where are you working? Because I'm coming to you." And she's like, "Well, I'm not really got an office yet, but I'll let you know." I'm like, "You let me know because I'm coming to you." She was the best. All the rest of them are like, the Marquis de Sade. Nathan's father-in-law is a dentist, and he's updating his audio system in his office. There are 6 separate rooms, and each room has a single passive speaker installed. All 6 speakers are identical. He just wants to send one stereo source to all 6 speakers at the same time. Stereo source? How about mono source? He has an old Denon AVR 785. It has 7-channel stereo listening mode that says it will replicate front left channel in a surround left and surround left back left channels, and the same on the right side. Could he just connect the 6 speakers to the front left right, surround left right, and surround back left right binding post, or does he need to consider some sort of series parallel wiring with all the speakers connected to a single binding post, or is a distribution amp or some other new hardware necessary? Yeah, that won't work because you will get all the left coming out of 3 of the speakers and all the right.
But is
coming out of
that
the 3
really?
of the
I mean, clearly this is just for background sound in these dental offices. I mean, does it?
Yeah, but I mean, it is occasionally not going to sound right.
Know, but who's really paying attention? And also, what is your source? Because, like, if it's a phone, every phone I've seen, you can put it into mono mode, right? Like you can have where it's still a stereo signal that's coming out, but it's mono joined signal coming out of your phone. Like, that's just an option in case you're using a single earpiece, but you want to have both sounds coming out of one side. Like,
I have never noticed that was an option.
Oh, yeah.
I have never.
Every phone lets you do that. So, like, maybe that's all you're doing. You've just got a little system where you just plug your phone in, you set your phone to mono mode. Now the signal's mono anyway, but it's coming out of left and right channels, and then this would work. Or we just don't really, like, how much stereo effect really goes on in most sound?
I guess it depends on what they're playing. If they're playing old music anyways. Yeah. I mean, as long as nothing from Queen comes on, you'll be fine. Right. Yeah, because Queen was
Or even if it does,
yes,
certain things will fade out of 3 of the rooms and into the other 3 rooms. But I mean, I think it's fine. I would totally just connect your 6 speakers to the 6 regular binding posts. I would put it into 7-channel stereo mode. I'd feed a stereo signal into it, and that's it. That is totally what I would do here.
I don't really see any way that you could connect all of these speakers and make them all mono by connecting them to 2 different binding posts. That's not going to end well. Okay, we'll do this real quick. I hope it's a short answer because I don't have the answer, and then we're going to stop. So Dan asks, how do you get 4K and Atmos on YouTube? Dan has seen Atmos music previews and Atmos demo videos posted on YouTube, but he can't seem to get them to play in anything other than stereo. Is he missing something obvious? I think you're missing that you don't have an LG or a Sony TV,
no, it's not even that. It's that there is no way through any device to listen to Atmos from YouTube. Those things that are...
I thought there was a
way.
I thought there was a way.
There used to be a way to get Dolby Digital 5.1. They don't even do that anymore. All of YouTube is all stereo all the time, no matter what device you're using today. Today is March 31st, 2020. This could change in the future. But yeah, I've seen the exact same videos you're talking about. They're labeled as there's an Atmos music preview. It's on YouTube. Or here is a Atmos movie demo. It's on YouTube. Nope. They're just stereo audio. You did nothing wrong, Dan. I know they're labeled as Atmos. They're not. The actual audio is only stereo on YouTube, and there is no way to hear actual Atmos audio from YouTube.
All right, what do we got left?
Excuse me, bad timing there. So on our,
I was gonna say, don't cough on this podcast.
Believe me, that was just some Pepsi going down the wrong pipe. That was not COVID cough. Gurinder and Jules are fully written out questions, and then quite a few questions came in on Monday. So there are people who have written in, and we will be getting to all of you next week.
All right. And if you want to share some stories with us, feel free. Just don't hold us to having to share them with anybody else.
It all depends on how many questions come in.
I want to thank our listeners of the week. I want to thank Lee for going to avrant.com and leaving us a PayPal donation on our Buy a Cup of Coffee link. And our 113 patrons over at patreon.com, including Francis.
That's right. So Lee donated via PayPal. You come to avrant.com. Over on the right-hand side, it says support AVRant. So that'll take you to PayPal. Thank you, Lee, for doing that. And our 113 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast for anyone who would like to sign up for a voluntary subscription. I call it Francis, thank you for being one of our 113 patrons.
And thank you to Tap, Tom, Christian, Carl, and Cesar, and all the others who have emailed us and contacted us in various and sundry ways to let us know that they're happy that we are soldiering on during this difficult time for everybody. And guys and gals, we're going to get through this together. And at the end of it, I can just hope that our home theaters will finally have all of the speakers installed in them, including my own, because I still have not done, because I am a terrible
See, I always
person.
feel so weird because I'm like, yeah, I wouldn't mind having some extra time on my hands like everyone else seems to, or not everyone else, but a lot of other people are talking about. But then by the same token, I'm like, wait a second, there's a ton of people who are like, gosh, I would like really like to have a job that isn't furloughed or has fired me at this point. So we can be let's be positive. We can envy each other a little bit, but we can also say that don't worry, grass is always greener on the other side. So
I feel like about half the people I know are out of work completely. Yeah. Like
I'm pretty sure they would prefer to have work and an income coming in versus the time off. I consider myself fortunate in that sense for sure. Tap, Tom, Christian, Carl, Cesar, everybody else who has sent us well wishes and thanked us for continuing to do the podcast. Thank you for continuing to listen. Thank everybody for continuing to send in your questions and downloading the podcast, because hey, no show without our AVRant listeners, and we thank you all very much for sticking with us.
For AVRant, I'm Tom
and
Andrew.
I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.